Here I have this Nissan Murano. It's the one I just had here yesterday for that coolant crossover pipe, if you want to call it that. Today we're actually going to get the brake pads done on the front and the rear. The brake pedal feels, let's just say, not so great. So what I'm going to do is, besides changing the brake pads, I'm going to suck out as much of the old brake fluid as I can and at least fill up the reservoir with new brake fluid and try to get a better pedal feel out of this thing. Here's part of the problem of why the brake pedal feels like crap. This lower slide pin is free, moves how it should, but this top one is completely seized in place, will not move at all. So what that causes is the inside pad can move because the piston is actually just pushing on it, but the outside pad can't really do anything because the caliper isn't free to move. So yeah, it's little stupid things like this that cause the brake pedal to not feel right. On the rear brakes, what's going on here is the slide pins still kind of moved. It wasn't perfect, so obviously I took them out, cleaned them up, re-greased them. But the biggest issue back here was the pads were actually seized in place via the hardware kit. You know, they just would not move. They were, you know, I had to get a hammer to get them out. So all the rust cleaned off of it. The pads now move freely inside of there. The caliper now moves. So again, all of this stuff just adds up to a real crappy feeling brake pedal. Okay, so I am done doing the brake pads on all four wheels. What I want to do next is try to siphon out this old brake fluid and fill it up with new fluid. Now, before anyone says anything, no, the customer did not pay me for this. They didn't ask for it. But I'm trying to help them out and try to get them the best possible feeling brake pedal as I can, because they only pay me to do brake pads. But what I would normally do is, after I'm done with the front brakes, okay, before I move to the back, I would go inside the car, pump the brake pedal to get pressure, and then move to the back wheels. But in this case, because I want to try to get as much of the old fluid out, I left the pistons on the front caliper completely pushed in, and the same thing for the back. So right now, all four pistons are completely pushed in on the calipers, and that way we could remove the maximum amount of fluid inside of this reservoir right here, if that makes any sense. I just took the car for a test drive. The brakes feel good. But we are having an issue. The car's overheating. I was here yesterday because I replaced that lower, I don't know, bypass hose, coolant hose, whatever you want to call it. I remember they had it towed in. They said it was overheating. There is a code for the vehicle overheating. I'm wondering if they drove this car while it was overheating and for how long. I wonder if they would have caused any damage, because we do have misfires and we have overheating, and I noticed the coolant level is higher than when it was this morning after taking it for a test drive. So I don't know, maybe a head gasket issue if they drove it for a while it was overheating. Okay, so here's where we are at. I noticed that if you let the car sit for a while and then you turn it on, it's got crazy misfires and it's kind of running rough, you know, almost like if coolant is making its way into the cylinders, and then once it kind of gets rid of it, it starts to run better. If you look over there, well, let's just get a closer look. While the engine is running, it's constantly bubbling, okay? It's never ending. And I just added a lot of coolant, and I know yesterday I completely filled it up. But let's see if we can zoom in on this. Whenever I give it gas, look at that. So I know the water pump could cause, you know, the fluid to start moving around like that, but not like that. That's excessive. Yeah, so it never stops. It's always doing that. Yeah, I think we have a head gasket issue. Now, was it here before that little pipe down there broke? Or because the pipe was broken, it leaked out all the coolant and the customer kept driving? I'll ask the customer, but other than that, I think I'm done looking at this car. They are gonna have to take it somewhere else to get that fixed, because I am not working on this engine doing no head gasket. Okay, so the owner of that Nissan Murano just picked it up, and I had a good talk with them about the suspected bad head gasket and just got the story on it. So basically, the car belonged to his uncle, okay, and that coolant bypass pipe, the one I just replaced on it, had been leaking for a while, and the guy would just keep adding antifreeze as needed. So anyway, he gives the car to his nephew, which the kid just got his license. It's his first car, and I guess his uncle didn't make him aware of the problem with the antifreeze leaking. So he's driving the car overheats. He said he pulled over, let it cool off a little bit, but he continues to drive it, and it got to the point where the car just shut off by itself due to overheating. So I think it's safe to assume that at that point, that's when the damage was done, and head gasket problems. So that sucks. Something so little like that little pipe leaking, if it would have just gotten fixed instead of trying to... Alright, so here we have a BMW X1, and we can see the situation with the rear rotors here, or the rear brakes. That rotor is like paper thin. It's metal to metal. I recommended she replace both rotors, but she wasn't trying to do all that. And also the sensor. So when I recommended what should get replaced, she wasn't trying to hear it. So we're only replacing one rotor and a set of pads. At least in this area, it seems like anyone who's driving a Mercedes or a BMW, they are the biggest penny pinchers. Even when I told her my labor prices to do this, which I can assure you are much less than what a shop would charge, and she was still shocked, talking about it costs that much to do the brakes. It just really baffles me. It seems like people who drive these foreign cars are the biggest penny pinchers. But now I'm just going on a rant here. Let's go ahead and get these brakes done. Okay, so I finished the side that was real bad, and I'm just about done on this side, the one that's just getting the pads. And looking at the pad that came off, she was cutting it real close. Look at that. Like, this thing was about to start rubbing like today. So just about done here. Just gotta put the wheel back on and it's all set. Okay, so here we have an 08 Charger. It just got dropped off this morning. It's the one I recently did the upper control arms on. And the other day, customer noticed something dripping underneath the car, so she brought it over for me to look at. And I didn't have much time to look at it, but she brought it back this morning. And we do have a code stored, so cooling system performance. And if you open the hood, the first thing you're gonna notice is this right here. Oh, I just noticed it. I can see the crack right there. Let's make it a good shot of this. Right there. Okay, so I was expecting whatever O-ring or gasket is underneath here to be leaking, but obviously it's not that. Alright, so I've started taking this apart already. And the only part I could get today is a Dorman unit. Looking at them closely, the one that came off of it was a Dorman unit, but it's gonna have to do for now. And looking at this right here, there's supposed to be an O-ring right here, and there was, but it looks like whoever was here previously just kind of slobbered it up with silicone. I guess that's just how it goes in this area. You know, silicone is a go-to. Nobody ever wants to fix things the right way. The cooling system's all filled up with antifreeze, and we've been holding pressure for over 10 minutes now. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that a fix. Just put the cap back on and start her up. Let it warm up. Just make sure everything's okay. But it looks like it's holding pressure very well. So pretty easy job here, and no silicone. I have that Mazda 2. It was in one of my previous videos. It has some blown out struts. It's the one that the customer was complaining about a clunking noise. And I think it was Pep Boys. They just wanted to change like everything. The bill was like over $1,000. But I found that we have blown out struts. So that's what we're going to end up replacing today. I don't have the quick struts, so I'm actually going to have to take all this apart to replace just the strut. And we have like a new bump stop and new dust cover or bellow, whatever you want to call it. But today is a crappy day. Look at this. Like, what the hell? Okay, so this is the strut from the right side of the car, and it actually still works a little bit. It's not completely destroyed, and that makes sense because the customer was not hearing any noise. So I'm just trying to get my glove on with one hand, which is virtually impossible. But it explains what was going on, because the customer was really only hearing a clunking noise on the driver's side, which I've already tested that strut when I took it apart the first time, and that one is completely blown. So it does take a little bit of force to push back in, and it actually comes back up. But we're still gonna end up replacing them as a set, since we have both of them brand new and we have a new boot and everything. Uh-oh. Watch out, we get some good stuff here. Look at that, made in Japan. You don't see that often. And there we go. Here goes the old beat up one. Let's see. And here we have the new one installed. So now I just have to go ahead and do the one on the driver's side, which is the one that's actually giving us a problem because it's completely blown out. Here's the strut off of the driver's side, and no force at all. Just goes right in, comes right back up. Well, manually at least. But yeah, you can see how bad it is. So this is where all the noise was coming from. Okay, so the new strut is completely assembled. It went pretty good. You could have another look at the old beat up one. And it's ready to go back on the car, and this Mazda 2 can now start putting down all that torque to the pavement with its new struts, and it'll be all set. Okay, so I am out on the test drive, and so far so good. It appears that the noise is completely gone, so that's good to hear. And that'll be it for this one. So here we have a Chrysler 200C. It's a good customer of mine. She used to have an older Altima, and she recently got this one. Unfortunately, she was in a car accident, and one of the things that was not here before the accident was an airbag code for right current deployment squib 1. So there's that. Okay, that's the first thing. Now she just picked it up from the body shop. Okay, and they I didn't see what the accident was like, but from what she described, it sounds like bumper, headlight, fender, hood, and there's also an indication that you could tell that they were painting this stuff, because look at this. You can see where they masked off, and then you can see the sections where they forgot to mask, and they painted like the rubber trim inside of there. So that really sucks. The issue is the rim was damaged, but the insurance company did not want to replace it, which is no surprise. They never want to replace aftermarket rims. If it was an original one, they probably would have replaced it for her, maybe. But we could see, you know, some indication that something was wrong with the wiring here after the accident. You could see they got electrical tape on it. You could tell that someone was in there poking around trying to repair something. And looking at the fender liner right here, there's another indication that something was shoved into this fender liner, whether it was the strut, the rim, I don't know, but you could see like rust on here. Honestly, this fender liner should have gotten replaced. So this just tells me, and then this right here, the brake line is obviously deformed. It was hit. It's got like a hard bend right there, and if you go look at the other side, it looks nothing like this. So these are just signs of a crappy body shop, and I know it too well because I used to work at one myself. You know, it's just a shit body shop. And besides the body shop, also the insurance. If you don't have a good insurance, a lot of times they just don't want to cover certain things. But like a safety issue like that, where now we have an airbag code that was not there previously, almost all insurance cover that type of stuff, because they don't play around with safety stuff. I mean, they may try to get out of, you know, something stupid like this, like replacing this liner, but like if an airbag deploys or something like that, they usually get that stuff fixed. So I'm surprised that that code is there for that problem with the airbag. But she brought it here today because of brake noise and You know, we could see the rotors don't look like they're in the best condition, and she said like a squealing noise coming from the engine, which I have yet to hear. But you know, I'm still looking, just looking over the car, see what I could find. Just so you could get an idea, this is what the brake line is supposed to look like. See how neat and untouched it is. The other side looks nothing like it. Clearly something hit it. Looking at the driver's side, we could see this little rubber insert right here. You can see it is not painted, so clearly the body shop just did a crappy job and they painted that rubber piece inside of there. Here we have a Kia Rio, and the customer brought it over because of a clunking noise. Primarily, he said whenever he's turning left. I was able to duplicate the problem once, but I had a hard time trying to, you know, get it to consistently happen. I could see he replaced the front struts recently. The stabilizer links look good, the bushings look good. Plus, it doesn't sound like that. It literally sounds like metal on metal. You know, something hitting. He took it to a shop, or I think, and they told him to replace the engine mounts. Now I've gone over each engine mount and really they look good to me. I don't see them torn or anything like that. So it took me a little while, but eventually I found this.